everyone. My name is Samuel Martino, and I have been running my own game studio for the past 6 years. This is my second time giving a panel at MAGFest. It's my favorite place to give a panel because everybody's a lot more fun, in my opinion. But I wanted to go over this topic today because this is something that isn't really talked about a lot when you're getting into making your own video games. It's something that people don't talk about, but it is incredibly valuable in just from my experiences of doing it. But a big thing I really want to say is, starting off, is that one, I am not an accountant. I'm not telling you how to do your taxes, how to run your business finances or any of that. I just want to share my experiences with you guys so you can see, you know, some of the behind the scenes stuff that people don't talk about. There's so many resources to help indie developers, but they aren't really out there or available. But I wanted to give a brief overview of who I am, so I'm not just some random guy up here. Like I said, I'm Samuel Martino. I've had the pleasure of doing this for the past 6 years. I've gotten to travel all over the world and speak at multiple different conferences about game design, and I love it. It is the greatest thing I've ever gotten to do in my life. I get to meet such incredible people. Every single person who I have met in the game industry has been wonderful. Like, this goes from, you know, some of the indie devs that I've met here to, you know, top developers for Ubisoft or EA and DICE. Like, you can go with them with, hey, I'm working on this video game, what do you think? And they'll show genuine interest, because the people that work in the game industry really care about what they're making. And I feel like that's something that you see in developers a lot. These are some of the games that I've gotten to work on in the past. So I started originally in RPG Maker MV. I'll talk about that a bit more when we get into that one, but we switched over to Unreal Engine, and I have loved working within Unreal. There's so much more we can do with it, and it's been really fantastic to meet so many developers working with all the tools that work with Unreal Engine, because you can do really incredible things with it. I would really like to point out the top 3 images. Well, I guess we have lights kind of to see everything, and the bottom middle one are from the current game we're working on, and I still, like, I can't believe we're able to work with stuff like this. I think it's so much fun, and all the people that make the incredible things up here today, I want you to know that every single one of them I met by chance. All of them, I was just talking to somebody at a convention, at a cafe, at a hookah bar. I'm like, hey, I love making video games. And they're like, oh, that's crazy. I just happen to be doing an art contest for Nintendo. Or, oh, hey, I just graduated with a degree in motion capture. Like you never know who you're going to run into to work on this. And that's why it's so great, because it feels like you can really meet the right people to make these crazy projects happen. You know, I've had the pleasure of working in so many different 3D programs, from, you know, doing 3D modeling to programming in Unreal to working in Substance Painter. Like, I have touched every single program, but I am by no means a master of them, and that's why it is so important to have such quality people you work with. Which is going to be one of my main points getting into this. So, the first game, and everything I did wrong, for any of you who know Chanel West Coast from Ridiculousness, that is Chanel West Coast from Ridiculousness. She's wearing a crop top and a hat with our game logo on it. And this was when we very first started our game company, the guy doing all of our music production said this was a fantastic idea. And one of the things I want to note here is, from this post, you know, 22,000 likes, 95 comments, that equated to 2 sales. 2. And, you know, and when we first wanted this, my music producer, Mikey Beats, he said, listen, Chanel's really popular, you know, she's got this new album coming out, she hits the right demographics. It's like, yes, but no one cares what Chanel West Coast says about video games. This comes to really targeting your marketing, and that is so crucial for being able to set your game up for success. We started in RPG Maker MV, which when I first started making video games, I had no programming knowledge. I was in my senior year of doing my degree at UMBC for political science, and I realized that I hated it, and even though it came easy to me, it wasn't something I enjoyed. And a couple of my friends, I had just had my heart broken, and they were like, why don't we make a game together? I bet that'll get your mind off of it. And 6 years later, here we are. But we started out in RPG Maker MV thinking it was going to be easier to work with. I have to say, because this is something that growing up, RPG Maker is something that's been around for a very long time. For most people that are really new to the game industry, even if you know nothing about it, you've probably heard of RPG Maker because it's been around for so long. RPG Maker is a fantastic tool for you to be able to really get started, but I have to say, hands down, RPG Maker MV was more complicated than Unreal Engine to figure out. It was insane. It is the limitations that you are working with are so finite and so difficult that you have to really get creative with how you're working around them. And Ashes came out in 2017. We shouldn't have to worry about trying to get around a hard cap of how many variables you can have in the game or how many switches. There's a hard cap for how many map files you can have. And the big issue with RPG Maker MV is that there's this horrible stigma around it that, all RPG Maker games are trash. They're all trash. And it's a really hard thing to fight because RPG Maker is super cheap to get into. You just got it on sale. What was it, $15? $15. That's like super easy for people to get into. But to make your game special, you really have to go in and find out what can I target to make this game shine among everything else. Especially when in something like RPG Maker MV, not only are you up against the hundreds of games that come out all the time in RPG Maker, you're also having to deal with the people who will look at your game and will downvote it, say RPG Maker trash, terrible, kill yourself, don't make games, and it's pretty rough. And that unfortunately is something I've only really experienced with RPG Maker MV, and it's just. It comes off as easier, but I can honestly tell you it's not. I have no mind for programming. I suck at math. I still have I've read 10 pages of my basic C for dummies. I can't do any of it. However, I've programmed 3 games in Unreal Engine. One of them entirely by myself. And like I said, I don't know what I'm doing, but it's really fantastic because if you understand the logic of what you're doing when you're making your game, working on an Unreal Engine is so much simpler. Because for me, I don't remember the formulas. I don't know what I have to call to make these games happen and how to write hard code. But in Unreal Engine, I understand that if I need, event begin play is the start of the code, and then this goes to the next line, and then so on and so on and so on. That's a lot easier to follow. And honestly, to me, that is really beginner friendly. I haven't personally worked a lot with Unity, but Unity is also very beginner friendly, if not a bit more on the coding side. But I feel like if you really go in, you're like, I want to make video games, but I don't know how to program, which in my years of doing this is something I've heard so many times, and I cannot stress enough that you don't have to be a programmer to do this. There are so many jobs in the game industry, so many that don't require you to ever even touch any kinds of code that are so incredibly important that if you have the passion for the industry, there's a role for you, I promise. We didn't start doing marketing for Ashes until 2 months before it came out. Bad. Don't do that. Never ever do that. For those of you who are at the How to Market Your Indie Game panel earlier, this is true. Market your game literally before you've even written a line of code. You need, once you have the idea, you need to start asking people, hey, what do you think of this? Hey, what do you think about this concept? Do you think this would be interesting? Would this be fun? That's marketing from the beginning. And it's so crucial, especially when you're making indie games today, because so many people want to be involved in the process, that by you doing that early, it's going to make life a million times easier when you actually have a community and a crowd that you have to now cater content to, if you're already actively sharing the process and including people in what you're making. The other thing I'll note that I think was probably the worst part about working on Ashes is that I loved it. I loved every minute of working on that game, but I got horribly sick from working on this game because there was a time I had to make, I think it was something like 100 maps in RPG Maker, because what I did was, in Photoshop, I would take the maps from RPG Maker and then go in and start painting on bushes and trees and trying to hand paint the maps, because that was how I thought, oh, maybe if the art style is different, we'll be able to get it to look good in RPG Maker. And had a deadline I wanted to meet, and I stayed up for 4 days straight, made all those maps, and then I couldn't eat anything for 2 weeks. I got so sick. And I just can't stress it enough, because you're going to reach points where you're going to be looking at your code. You're just going to be like, God damn it, this isn't worth it. This isn't working. It doesn't make any sense. It's awful. And there are 2 ways to fix that work 99% of the time for me. Either you talk to nothing. My friend calls it the rubber duck theory. I think it's a known programming theory. Yeah. You can I'm sorry. A lot of my friends came to support me, and I love all of them, and so many of them work with me. But they don't all know Unreal Engine, and Tyler has gone out of his way to try and learn some of it. But I'll be like, Tyler, I don't know why this code's working. I'm running this, and this, and I'll share my screen, and it's all just spaghetti code, and he's just like, I don't know. And then eventually I'll figure it out just from talking to him. Or honestly, if you just walk away from it, take the time, breathe, and realize that this doesn't need to be done tomorrow, you'll fix it. I promise. That has been the solution so many times. Getting into the actual process of making your first game, and again, I really need to stress that these are my opinions and these are my experiences. They're just from what I've had to go through in my times doing this. When you are starting out, there are indie developers, and I'm sure some of you out there who are solo developers. You're incredible. It's a lot. It's so much. And my thing is that I've worn many hats over the years, and I've done a whole bunch of different jobs, but there's some things that I can't do. And when you're starting out, you don't have millions of dollars. You don't have tons of investors. You don't have, you can't just go online and be like, okay, I need to hire my full staff. This is what I need. If you're able to figure out what you need that is so important for your game to be successful, and then focus on, okay, this is what I need to foster someone that's going to be fantastic at this. I'll get into her work, and I will talk about her a lot because I love her to death. My lead character artist, Stephanie Koost, she started 3D modeling 2 years ago, and all the characters you've seen were done by her. She is absolutely incredible, and she is someone who I wouldn't be able to make any of the games without it. That's something that we need to have incredible, beautiful looking characters, but that's a very specialized job. That is someone's entire job in the game industry, is you make characters. And that is so in demand. That is one of the top demand jobs in the game industry, is to make characters. Because it's so needed and it takes so long. So, and I mean, on top of that, we have also Connor as a panel tomorrow. He does all of the lighting for my games. That made our games look 20 times better. And once you see, you'll start to notice what makes the biggest difference and what you really need to focus on when you're doing these things. For us, our current project is we're remaking our first title that we did in RPG Maker, and we're doing it in Unreal now. And our thing is, we know it's fun, we love the story, we love the game, we love everything about it. It's not pretty. It's not. It was a 2D JRPG made in RPG Maker, not with default assets for everything, but it was a while ago. And now it's like we need to get the attention of a community so we can really bring people in and attract people to actually grow this community for our games. You make it look pretty. You make it beautiful. So we focused, okay, we want to show a beautiful cinematic trailer. That's how we're going to show this game off first to the public. Okay, what do we need for it to be incredible? Great animations. Okay, that's got to be a big investment. Incredible characters. Okay, we have Stephanie, that's perfect. Fantastic lighting to show everything off. Okay, I have Connor. If you look at what you're trying to do and you look and you say, okay, this is really important. I don't think I can do it myself. I need to find somebody who can help me. And this is something that I cannot stress. People should not and will not work for free. You may not be able to pay people insane salaries. You may not be able to give them huge commission bonuses or anything, but if you're able to provide that value, you can have a team. And I'll get into that in the later slide. I have a whole slide on that. This is from my personal experience, and I cannot stress how valuable this has been to me. Form a business. It is $100. You can do it yourself, or you can pay LegalZoom to do it, and then it's maybe like $200-300. It really is a small amount of work and a small investment to open so many doors. Like, it is insane to me the number of things that I have access to simply because I have a federal identification number because I run a company. Not only that, it's really helpful if when you're first starting out, you're able to keep your ownership centralized. Of course, you want your developers to receive revenue shares and get paid, and like they helped you start the company. But by having it be centralized, it makes it way easier for you to handle big things like anything with accounting or purchases or taxes. It's very difficult when everything is super fragmented. Not to mention that when you get the point that you want to look for investors or grants or anything, having that equity in your company is so valuable. And it's something where, you know, the people who I work with, it's like the equity that I have that I can split up for investing. It's the fact that we have enough to give away that can fund our projects, to pay our developers, and we keep enough that we still hold control of the company, and everybody still gets a fair share from all the revenue from the company. And this is only possible if you form a business around what you're doing. I mentioned it before with marketing from day one. You have to. You should make social pages for each of your games. I just learned this, so this is like stuff we just hired a marketing person for our company. So it's been fantastic. We've been able to do a whole lot more now that we have somebody who's dedicated just to that. But having social pages for your games, being engaging on them, producing content for them, and one of the most valuable resources for us was Discord. Discord is fantastic. I mean, the indie marketing people said it earlier too. I'm sure most of you have Discords for your communities and your games, but that is so valuable because you are able to take all of the traffic, all of the marketing, all of the pushes that you do on every other platform and drive them to your Discord. Because in your Discord, it is very easy for you to feed information to the people in there and get them right in front of all the content they need to see. And it's a lot easier if you bring them to one platform and then disperse everything. As I mentioned before, identifying your niche in the game and making that your message is incredibly important because that's how you'll be able to stand out among the sea of other games out there. So many games get released every day, and the quality, of course, varies widely. You know, it could be anything. But the games that stand out and are really successful are the ones that are unique. There's something about them that doesn't really exist at the moment, and the companies that are really capitalizing it are all the indie studios. All the huge games, for the most part, that I can think of that I've played in the past couple of years have been indie titles. And it's clear to see that the people that make those games know what is the strength of that game and focus on it. And if you have that niche, you can build your marketing around it. For example, Ashes of Kanaka's niche is that we have 55 companions who can join you in a party of 4. And the hope with that is that all those companions have the same level of development, depth, loyalty missions as you would expect from a Mass Effect character or a Dragon Age character. That kind of level of companionship, but because you have 55, every single player should be able to find a party that they enjoy playing with. That's what makes it special. That's the core message around everything that we put out there. And also, just from being able to break it down to that point, it's going to make getting your message across so much easier. Especially like when you're making your games, you're going to think every single thing in it is amazing. And like I always love sharing everything that we're working on across all the channels. But if you can focus on what you are really trying to get across, that's going to make it a lot easier to hit your core markets and bring your core audiences in to your Discord, ideally, and then into your game communities. I cannot stress this enough. This has opened so many doors, so many, and no one talks about it. No one tells you about this. No one explains that it's honestly pretty easy. I came into this with zero business knowledge, none. I learned as I went. We were able to set things up. This actually originally started because I wanted to go to E3 in 2016. And it used to be that to go to E3, you had to provide 2 forms of identification that said you were a member of the video game industry. One is you can be a member of the International Game Developer Association, which anybody can join, and they have fantastic resources, so they're worth it in their own right. But the other one is it's like you have to have something else, so like a pay stub or a W-2 or some kind of tax form or a company credit card. That was really easy to open once I had the company. It was, just call up any card I've ever used before, boom, easy. And we didn't even use it. But it served as a form of identification, and that got me a free ticket to E3. That's something that you would not have access to if you weren't running your own business. Not only that, the ability for you to be able to make a game is expensive. Everything you use to make the game is going to be expensive. And it's just something that unfortunately all the programs used to make these games are going to come with a super high price tag. And obviously, there's no legal way to get them for free, but if you have a company, you are able to take your operating expenses and write them off against the money you make. That means that you're able to take what you buy and then write it off on your taxes. That is only possible if you have a business. This is not something that you can do if it's freelance or if you're just a person. You have to be registered as a business. Not only that, I've gone through the process of applying for several grants in the state of Maryland for the past 3-4 months. A lot of them lock you out if you don't have that federal identification number. And like I mentioned, once you form your company and it's officially opened, one of the very first things they give you is a federal EIN number, and that is your employment identification number. That opens everything. That's for credit cards, that's for bank accounts, that's for, if you want to release on PlayStation or Xbox, they require you to submit an EIN to get a license to launch on those consoles. So that also is something that you don't have fully opened up unless you're a company. The only way that would happen otherwise is if somebody else picked you up or someone published you or had the rights already. The next thing, because I don't just want to talk about taxes and businesses forever, but recruiting the right team is crucial. I could not do a single thing that I do without the incredible people that I work with every single day. And every single one of them is just, I can't teach somebody to care, and you can't. And all of you that want to make video games want to make video games because you care about making video games. You're not doing it because you think it's a get-rich-quick scheme. We all know that's a lie. So it's something that you need to be able to build your team around what you need, but they need to also know that they're also being able to grow with you. So the developers are going to be picky. When you first start looking, I'm sure some of you guys are in some of the social media groups. There's like Unreal job posting boards and there's so many other pages where you can look for people. So many different people will be like, hey, we're offering revenue share, or hey, we're like trying to get this project off the ground, we want to work with people. You don't have to offer people huge upfront amounts of money because most people know they're not going to be able to get that from an indie studio. It is so incredibly difficult to work in the game industry. It's as if you're trying to work in music or movies. Being able to go and be like, I'm going to go and work at EA, at a big AAA company. You need such a giant portfolio and references, and you have to have essentially been working at a AAA studio already for a AAA studio to want to hire you. And that seemed really unfair. That was a big reason why I started Dogwood in the first place. As I said, that you can't teach people to care. There are a lot of incredibly talented people out there who really know their stuff, and they're really good at what they do. But you have to want to do this. And when you work with people, and eventually it becomes a lot easier to pick up like who's serious, who wants this to happen, who wants to actually put in the time to make this work, because this is something that I can't do this alone. And if the people who I work with are not able to put in the time to help me with it, it's just not going to happen. And that's something that I will 100% take somebody who wants to learn how to make video games over somebody who is just really talented in a 3D modeling program and just wants to make as much money as they can from the different contracts. And it's something where I've been able to teach somebody how to 3D model in 2 days. And he's one of my favorite modelers. He's been with me for years. That's something where if you are able to provide that value, which is a huge part of this, and this is what I'm saying, that people don't work for free. The people that are working on these games are working on it for a couple reasons. One, of course, they want to make video games and they believe in the idea, and that's of course a very core foundation. But they do it because they see a future in the project as well. When I started remaking Ashes, I looked at it that it's a big game. I would love to get it funded. I'm doing everything that I can to push it in the right direction to get it to happen. But I know that with everything that we have put into it, that even if something goes horribly wrong and Dogwood can't afford to continue to operate, every single person who worked with me is going to have a beautiful motion captured 3D cinematic trailer to show look what this company did. Every single person touched this. This looks like a AAA quality production. That is the value right there that people are not able to get from just out of the blue. A big thing that I try to offer is my studio over the years has bought a ton of the 3D software, and so much of it is insane. Anybody who models, use Blender. Use Blender. It's at this point, Maya is, I'm gonna recommend Maya because I use Maya a lot, but Maya is so expensive. And I wouldn't use it if I couldn't provide the licenses to my team to use it. That's what I'm saying. I can provide Adobe licenses, I can provide Maya, I can provide licenses for Character Creator, all the motion capture suites, animations. Stuff like that is thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of software. And not only that, I know the people who work with me care about what they're doing, so they can use it for their own projects. That way, they have their value, they have these wonderful programs they get to actually use and practice in, and you get these wonderful benefits because you have people who now love working in these programs, love you because you're providing them, and they're getting better because they're able to practice every single day. So it's a complete win for everybody who you work with. And as I said originally, you don't need to be able to have large salaries to get really wonderful people to work with you. I know it's gonna sound really cliche, but honesty, kindness, and understanding has gotten me so much farther than $1 million would have. The doors that have been opened just by being able to understand the people you work with are human is insane to me. I've had a developer who told me that he came to me, he said, "Hey Sam, I'm so sorry, I can't make a meeting, I just had a death in the family." And I'm like, don't apologize. What? Go, you're fine. It's fine. And all of us can be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's what you should do. No, most people will not. Most of these businesses I've seen will not. And it shocks me because that's something where you think that even the most basic human kindness will make that big of a difference. I love Stephanie, and I'll always talk about her because she's she just randomly came into Dogwood, and she's been such a huge part of it with us that she's someone who does a ton of work for Dogwood over the years, and over those previous years when we've had a budget or where we've had some funds, I've been like, Stephanie, you work for me all the time. You make all these characters. Can I please PayPal you something for this? And she'll say no, because she says, I want to see that the company gets funded and that we're able to operate first. You can't buy that. You can't. There is nothing that is something you will not be able to find no matter how much of a salary you offer. And that comes from just being able to talk to people and being able to be friendly and upfront about what you're doing. Because if you show that you have the passion in it, the people who already have the passion in making games are going to be like, oh wow, this guy's really into it. We're going to help him. And you can. I see so many people that go from solo teams to 6 people in a day because you just put out the feelers. There's so many people learning these programs. When it comes to making the game itself, this is something that I've had a very difficult time with over the years, especially because you're going to get discouraged. This isn't going to be fun, happy roller coaster, meadows of flowers all the time. It's not. There's a lot of very, very difficult things you have to deal with. It is incredibly stressful, and there's going to be moments where you're just going to be like, why am I doing this? It's just it causes so much stress, and you just wonder, I love this, but it's killing me. If you set reasonable goals with reasonable milestones, you are able to not only keep yourself in check, but you also are able to help guide the people that work with you. Don't set unrealistic guidelines and be like, hey, I want the entire lighting for this map done in 2 days. No. I'll ask my developer and I'll say, hey, I need this done for like this aspect of combat finished. How long do you think it's going to take? And he'll say, maybe 3 to 5 days. I will budget for that time, and I will then work with them, and we will be able to meet those guidelines. There's no point in me giving unrealistic guidelines because then the person working with you is going to feel bad that they're not able to meet these expectations, but they're also going to be really disappointed because it's going to be like, well, I want to work on this, but not if it's going to kill me. A big thing as well is when you're working on these projects, you need to be able to show milestones. This is something that I found that really helps me stay motivated. This is not something that's like, do this and you'll be successful, but it really helps me personally. Because no matter what you're doing, whatever aspect you're working on a game, if you can see the difference that you made, worth it. 100%. I can sit and work on something for 8 hours, and then I see it work, and I'm like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. Worth it. Perfect. If you're able to do that, no matter how mundane or difficult or whatever you're working on, if you can see that little bit of progress, it'll keep pushing you forward, I promise. I also make a huge point to try and include all the people who I work with in this development process. Granted, Ashes is a remake, but it's something that we want to make it what we want it to be. When we first made Ashes, we had just started and there were 4 people in the company. Now I have 14 people who I work with, and all of them have several years of experience in the game design field now, and all of them will have incredibly useful opinions and will want the game to succeed. Nobody is going to suggest something in your team that is going to be a detriment to the problem. They're going to do it with the right mindset. I think this will help it. Obviously, not everybody's suggestion is going to be the best suggestion, but you open up, hey, I want to know what you guys want to add, and then the team can discuss it, and then they're involved in that process of actually making the game happen. In so many studios, especially the bigger ones, you don't have that kind of freedom. It's kind of like, hey, I need you to do this. It's part of a larger project, and that's it, and you do that. And that's not fun. That, this is a very creative industry, and people want to be able to be creative and put their own mark on everything. That being said, as much as I know we all love this, and this is something that I can program forever. I love this. I love doing it. But you have to take a break. You have to stop. Even if it's just take your weekends. Take a day, even if you can't take a weekend. I am notorious with this, that I never stop working. Unfortunately, when you start your own project, you really don't stop. You always have to be on. You're always answering things. People are always questions, or something needs to be signed, or some email needs to be answered. But if you can just take a day to just disconnect, do something you enjoy, you will go so much farther. It sounds like such a small thing, but honestly, from doing this, I've come back from almost quitting the company, from being able to just walk away, breathe, and then come back to it. Like I said, it doesn't have to be something that I'm hating, but it will make a huge difference when you go back and you want to make it, and you want to be able to actually get it working. We have a meme. It was made by Tyler, so you can thank him. Again, these are my opinions, and this is something that these are from my experiences of using them. And this is something that a lot of these programs are extremely expensive, and I want to be able to give recommendations for your projects because these can be very expensive mistakes, in my opinion. Marvelous Designer is one of my favorite 3D programs that exists. It is a cloth simulation program that you can use for doing clothing for characters, as well as doing blankets, or if you have to do wind simulation or any kind of stuff like that. It is $250 one time. There's no annual fee, and that was always a huge thing for me when I got Marvelous Designer. And you would think that, oh, cloth simulation, that seems really specific. I use it for so much. It's pretty surprising how much we actually end up using Marvelous Designer, not only just for doing clothing for characters and game stuff. I'm sure you guys have seen things like MetaHuman exist. It's getting very accessible to be able to make beautiful 3D characters now. However, It's not easy to animate them. It's not easy to make clothing for them. There is a huge, huge market. For anybody out there who is doing 3D modeling that wants to do like, oh, what's a good thing for me to get into to work on? Clothing. Clothing. You will make a fortune. There is such a demand because there's just nothing out. There's nothing out there, and what does exist is very limited and very specific. You know, if 9 times out of 10, I'll be like, oh, I need something, and it might be worth it for me to just go buy it rather than make it. And then I can't find anything close. If you were able to go and actually build a full clothing library to work with the modern character programs, my God, it would be great. It would be fantastic. It would make such a huge difference. I personally love Unreal Engine. I'm a little bit biased, and I accept that. My big reason, everything, you know, with what it can do aside, the community it has is what makes it worthwhile. Because I don't know how to program. So when something goes horribly wrong, I can usually Google exactly what's wrong, and then boom, Unreal forum post comes up. Here's the problem, here's the solution, here's how you fix it. That's something that is really unique to Unreal and Unity. Unity also has a fantastic community for that. But an issue with, like, I've worked with CryEngine before, I've worked with Lumberyard, I've played around with them. They're fun, they're very powerful, but they don't have any community. If you don't have extensive programming knowledge and have the ability to go in and kind of learn it yourself, you're really stuck, and it's really not beginner friendly. I recommend Udemy for tutorials. I learned a lot from YouTube, and I'll always sing YouTube's praises. I can give YouTube channel recommendations forever. But Udemy is the place where I learned how to program. There is a course on there called How to Program Your First 2 Games in Unreal Engine. It's still up there, and it goes on sale for like $10.99 every week. That's how I learned to program in Unreal. I learned it taught me every single in and out of that engine and what I needed to know on how to use it, going from nothing. And when I was finished, I could make an endless, it was like a wave fighting game. But it looks really professional when you're done with it. As I said with Maya, I really love Maya because I use it as a bridge for everything. Maya is fantastic because a lot of these programs don't have an easy transition into a proper game engine, but if you feed into Maya, Maya can fix 90% of your problems, which actually ties into a big thing in my not recommended, and this is something that if you guys have a suggestion, please let me know because this has been my nightmare. Real Illusion. Real Illusion makes the programs like Character Creator 3, iClone 7, Cartoon Animator. They're a big animation suite company. I have spent easily $5,000 to $6,000 on their software. Not because like, oh, I'm buying Character Creator 3, here's my annual license fee. No, I had to pay that much because if I wanted to be able to use the program I bought, you have to now spend an extra $600, $700, $800 to be able to do anything in it. You cannot export your work in iClone. Anything you make in an animation, you cannot export it as anything other than the proprietary file type they use unless you pay $600 for a program that is it's a license file. It's a glorified license file. It has the UI of Windows XP and it doesn't work. That means like say again, it doesn't work and it's $600. But you have to have it because iClone will not let you export files unless it checks that you have that program. The nickel and diming is insane to me for this, and it is something that nobody can do this if you're not a major studio. Like, who's going to be able to just build an entire animation suite just from scratch? I'll tell you now, the only reason we were able to was because one of our investors had a Bitcoin mining rig that was in our old office. And when cryptocurrency prices went crazy last year, we sold them all and made enough money to buy a full motion capture studio. Most people are not going to have that happen, and that shouldn't be that shouldn't be something that these companies expect. I think that Unreal Engine's metahumans will eventually replace Character Creator 3. It's very difficult because Character Creator 3 and iClone 7 are very key parts to our development pipeline. but I cannot tell you how many times that has been our bottleneck, always. And you'll hit a problem with it, and there'll be no solution because they don't have much of a forum or a community. And then you have to email them, and it takes 2 weeks, and they're going to say, "Oh, did you uninstall the program?" Well, I didn't need to wait 2 weeks to hear that. But unfortunately, there just isn't much of an option right now. But I do say that, there has to be a better option than that, because it's just not something that indies can really do. Things like Mixamo exist, if anybody's used Mixamo before. Unfortunately, Mixamo is not that great anymore after Adobe killed it, because, But it's still fantastic today because it works really well with the Unreal Skeleton. Again, to get Mixamo properly working on Unreal Skeleton, you have to run it through both Maya and Blender. I think that might have changed now, but I remember the last time that I used Mixamo, I had to run it through Maya to get it to work on the Unreal Skeleton. Then I had to send it to Blender because Blender had a specific plugin that it ran to be able to retarget some of the bones, and then you can send it to Unreal Engine. And unfortunately, if you don't have the ability to do animation by yourself, that's unfortunately the best bet you'll have. I don't have it up here, but I do recommend, and I 100% have had very positive experiences with it, is Fiverr. Fiverr has literally everything. And 100%, if you look at something, let's say you're making a 3D game, right? You have modelers who can do beautiful hard surface modeling, your maps look incredible, your worlds are great, characters are hard. It's just it's very, very difficult. And something I see a lot when people share their indie projects is just these gorgeous, gorgeous worlds, beautiful scenes, everything. Sound effect, perfect, particles, incredible, gameplay, fantastic. Their character is a default model from Fuse or something from Adobe. And it sucks because you think, well, that's the center of the screen. That's something that needs to be beautiful, incredible, has to stand out. You could definitely get an incredible character made on Fiverr for a fraction of the price of what you would to actually just buy the programs. And that in its own right, if you're not doing a massive project with hundreds of characters and tons of stuff like that, Fiverr is a very good option for that. 100%, it is worth it to be able to get quality hero assets, and your main character is definitely one of them. My last pick, because I've been going this for a while, is I just want to touch on the last two from my not recommended. Perforce, if anybody's used Perforce, it's a version control software that is the industry standard for Unreal Engine. It's built the actual functionality and integration is fine. It's simple, but Perforce is very unstable, is what I would say for it. And that, if it's not, basically for us, it's either Sam forgot to tick a box in Unreal Engine and that's why it's broken. We're stuck waiting on customer support from Real Illusion, or the work server's done and is down and no one can work. It's one of the three. And honestly, when it comes to collaborating and working with people, it is definitely worth it to set up a server. I'm not that good with it. Tyler helped me. I 100%, this is something that even if you don't have resident wonderful friend that knows computers, it's something that you can easily figure out how to set up, because a lot of people use these version control softwares for their projects. But it's great because it allows you to be able to see, oh, this person changed this, they use these files, or if you're working on something, you can check out the files so they don't get broken and changed. So it has its uses. I just personally do not like Perforce. You can set up a GitHub server on your own personal server box. That's honestly something I'm looking into. That's something that is very successful, and a lot of people use that. And I would 100% recommend that if that is something you can do, I would use GitHub over Perforce. The other thing, and this is something that I experienced for the last game that I released, there are a ton of different sites and companies that offer indie boosting. Indie boosting is essentially, there are so many companies that offer this service, but what they do is they're like, okay, here's a bunch of content creators that we work with, here's who they hit, here you can target what kind of audience they have, and here's the budget they usually ask for to do a video on what you're doing. The thing with that is that, one, they don't really give you a whole lot. You have to do everything with kind of going through and being like, do these people really, match my genre of game? Are they the right kinds of of people who I want to represent our products. I mean, even when you go through and you're like, oh, I'm making a family fighting game. This is a channel that it's a father and a son, and they love fighting games. Perfect, right? That sounds like the perfect audience right there. Nothing at all. And it's because a lot of these middle companies aren't actually doing a whole lot for you. They're just giving you the connections and the email and the contact email of these people, and then average rates. So you don't know the ratings of these people. You can't see any kind of reviews. And when you're dealing with this, it's usually like, I think we worked with $1,000 budget the last time I worked with. So small, I wasn't doing a ton of stuff. That's still $1,000 that you kind of are just putting out there and hoping that it's going to hit the right people. That I just haven't had a whole lot of luck with the indie boosting services. I think it is far more valuable to have your own person on the team whose entire job is marketing. That's something that I met tons of people doing this in every single field. I never met a dedicated marketing person that wanted to be on for the video games. And that unfortunately is such a huge part of game development. You can make a game, but no one's going to play it if nobody sees it. It's really unfortunate, especially because marketing is a full-time job. It takes so long to be able to do it that it has to be somebody's dedicated job. Just because you got to be on social media, you have to be making content, you have to be planning things, posting things weeks in advance, figuring out events. It's so much. But if you were to take that budget that you were going to put in indie boosting programs, use it to be able to have a proper marketing person help you build your community, because that's worth way more. I 100% promise that. I have the last few slides for just some of my experiences for how, again, I'm not some big AAA developer making billions of dollars. I'm not. I have made 4 games. My studio is still around. We're still kicking through the pandemic, but we're still trying to get our hit. We're still trying to make it, still trying to have that success so that we can be an established studio. I have had a lot of success with going to events and networking, not in a way to sell the game to my customers directly, but to be able to meet people in the industry. It's insane the doors that have been opened because of that. I was invited to speak at a conference in Munich because I had made friends with this big YouTuber who does 3D modeling. That's what I'm saying. And if you can meet these people and you go to the events and you talk to people, you never know who you're going to meet. I think I said when I was talking to people at the indie marketing panel, I've met someone who was I think it was head of acquisitions or head of marketing for Manhattan Comics, one of the biggest comic book companies in the world. They were just here. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. And it's just, if you talk about what you're working on and people care, like you're passionate about your projects, talk about them, tell them to people, say, hey, I'm making video games, I'm working on this. Everyone's gonna think that's incredible. I always think that, nobody wants to hear me draw on about video games, but every time I open my mouth, be it inside here or outside by the pool vents or like anywhere in this convention, everybody's like, wow, that's really cool, I wanna hear more about it. That's typically the response you're going to get. I mentioned building a community, and I'm sorry, I really want to get to questions in case you guys have any, because I've been rambling for this whole time. But as I said, building a community is important. Starting a Discord from the very, very beginning is crucial. If you do this, you will be able to actually start seeing people before your game is even properly ready to market fully. If you have this community, you will have dedicated people that will actually want to engage in your content that you'll have constantly. This is something you don't really get from social media outlets because it's a bit of a delay. You don't have instant access to people. You can't just see, oh, this person's playing this. These are things that are very exclusive to Discord that are so valuable. I 100% agree that you're able to grow your own communities by working with other communities. This is something where I'm in a ton of different development Discords. I'm in tons of different indie game Discords. You just talk to people. Everybody's working on something really cool, and everybody loves to talk about it and wants to hear what other people are doing. Just by being in there and engaging, you'll have people who will pop in your Discord. Most of these channels have, if you just ask the mods, be like, hey, I'm making this game, can I promote it? They'll say yes. Most people, I think I've gotten maybe 2 or 3 no's over the years of doing this. It's one of those things where you just had to be able to ask people. and you'll be surprised how many people are actually willing to just help you. If you're always open to opportunities, this will also make your life so much easier, because you'll be working on games and so many things will happen to you and things will come your way that you wouldn't think would be something that you could get into and really capitalize on. As I said, we built our own motion capture studio last year, and that was something that we did to build a cinematic trailer for our game. I did not expect that to be something that is so in demand that we're the only motion capture studio in the state of Maryland, and there is a ton of demand for it. Thank you. I haven't been able to do any marketing for it. I made a Fiverr page for it. That's it. I get 2 to 3 offers a day for motion capture, and like that ends, and that's like hundreds of dollars of contracts on the low end. That's something where it's not something you would normally see, but that's something that I look at as, oh, if we can have our motion capture studio be an operating entity within the company, that's something that makes money, and then we can reinvest it into our development. And I'm already doing motion capture for the games, so it's not like I'm losing anything by doing this extra work. The last thing I really want to end on here is that I've talked about a lot of different things in the industry and a lot of really positive things, and I want to say I love it. I've loved every moment of this. I would not change any of it. However, it can be very, very, very negative, and it can become very negative very quickly. I'm a very sensitive person, so I take a lot of it to heart. But I mean, I think back, the very first game I made, and thankfully this is the only time I ever got death threats, but I would get death threat emails because our game had LGBT characters in it. That's something that you look at it and you're like, that's horrible. Like, why? Like, what is the point of saying this? But you have to look at it, and the way I go is just, like, fuck it. like, what's this person gonna do? Who cares? Like, and that's the thing, is that you will have people who will just troll your page, harass you, tell you, oh, your games are shit, go kill yourself, you're awful, don't do this. No, they don't matter. Those opinions are so inconsequential that it's irrelevant. And eventually, well, not eventually, but it's just, I feel like you end up getting a thicker skin as you start going through it and you make these games. These are images of a couple of projects that I really loved and I worked on that never got to come to fruition for one reason or another. These were games I loved. I loved them, very passionate about all of them, and unfortunately we just had to stop them. And it's something that, it sucks, you know, sometimes things happen to stop these things, but you cannot let it stop you. Because you're gonna hit these barriers, and that's why 99% of people don't finish their first game. All these people right here, including Bugs Bunny in the first row, are such wonderful people that have made this possible. And I want to end it that I think the best thing you can possibly do to get your game out there is to build a supportive team around you that care and want it to happen as much as you do. Because it's going to be stressful and it's going to suck a lot. But if you have the people around you who are like, hey, it's okay, we can figure it out, world of difference. I wouldn't trade these people for the world. I love them to death, and they're my friends, and they do incredible work. And like I said, I can't pay people huge salaries, but by being able to offer value and have something that people can jump into and be a part of, that's enough to be able to get a team that wants to work with you, and that will be able to make it so you're able to get through your first game. I know I went on forever. I'm so sorry. This is my contact info. I would like to leave this because if you guys ever want to email about anything, if you are like, hey, I would like to do, I'm interested in this field of video game design, how do I start? Email me. If you're like, I really am interested in this and I want to work on something, email me. I have a question about how to start my business, email me. I am more than happy to answer any questions about working in the game design industry and help in any way I can. Because it's a lot. It is a huge experience for people to work on, and being able to have a community that is there and supports each other is huge. And it makes it so much easier to deal with this. I'll open this up to questions. I know we're nearly at the end if we have any, but we're looking for a concept artist. If you know anyone, or if you are a concept artist, please let me know. This is some of the concept art that we're currently working with to do our character work. Having concept pieces is the difference between a character taking 2 months and 2 weeks. So a concept artist is very, very important. But we really just want to have somebody who can really, draw the world, paint what we have, so we're able to build our 3D models around that. And if we, we're trying to have, I guess, an artist in residency. I think that sounds a bit better. But please let me know. And that's my email. It's always open. We have a Twitch that we do development streams on. All of our social links are on there, and our Discord links, we can easily be found there. But thank you all for listening to me ramble for so long. I'm happy to, thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions. I really want to make sure I do, because, yes? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, most of them offered. It wasn't even a matter of me having, I mean, definitely I had to ask for some people, and like I have people who I would reach out to and be, hey, someone recommended you, I know you want to make video games, would you like to work on this? But for the most part, I mean, most of the people who I've worked with just starting out, I started this in a hookah bar on Rockville Pike. It's called Sam's Cafe, and and I would sit there on my laptop all day, and I would just program art, everything on my laptop, and like people would come up and they'd be like, hey, what are you doing, Sam? I'd be like, oh, I'm doing this, and this. I wish I could tell you that there's a secret of hey, here's how you find the best people and all the talent you need to make this happen. But it's really just, if you talk about it, you'll be surprised the people that'll show an interest. Because even people who you wouldn't think would be like, oh, this person's not really into video games. You're gonna find out hey, Photoshop's my hobby. I'd love to do textures for you. That's something that makes such a huge difference. And it's something that will, it's really encouraging to have people come up and ask that they want to help. But the other big thing for me, and this is when it comes to actually being able to reaching out to people and being like, hey, I need your help on this project, I want to work with you. Having those programs, honestly, is incredibly valuable and is a fantastic investment, because the people you work with are going to really appreciate it. Most of the people who I worked with came in using student licenses, or they're like, oh, I love my work, but I can't sell anything because I have this stupid license file and it doesn't let me do anything. And by being able to be like, hey, don't worry, I pay for Maya, here's the license. Yeah, that's something where it's like, you've paid $250 and you've got somebody who loves you now because you've just provided a program that they could not have access to before, and then they grow with you as well. And that's something that I 100% recommend is once you know what you need, see what the programs that are used that are the standard for what you're trying to do, and then see if you can acquire those and be like, hey, I'm working on this project. I want to have really amazing particle effects. I've gone and paid for Houdini for a year. Here's your license to Houdini. Can you please work with me? Boom. That's really what that will get a ton of people, or in my experience. Yeah, of course. Are there any other questions? Yeah. Yes. Final Fantasy VII was a huge inspiration for starting it. It's because when I made it, it was So we all went into it with, we had just made a Dungeons and Dragons handbook for the Mass Effect series. Like, we're all huge Mass Effect fans, and we started making this. We're like, we want to make an awesome space opera RPG. And there's only so much you can do in RPG Maker if you want to do something like that. So it's that we're able to revisit, and like, we have the original script and all the writing and everything, and you see, and like, we have all these notes of like, I want to do this scene should have this, we should have this. And you realize it becomes a completely different game with what we actually wanted to include. But like I said, those hard limitations on RPG Maker MV really are going to make it that like when we're able to show like Ashes now compared to Ashes when it was an RPG Maker, it's an entirely different game. Yes? So that's also a hard one because this is a massive project, so I really don't I don't recommend doing something super large, but if you can build something that can set you up for the future, that will allow you to make something that's on a much smaller scale. For example, I made a game called Static. Static was designed to be a prequel to the bigger world of what is Ashes of Kanaka. That gave me, okay, I want to convey a story that tells how this faction came to be. And I'm able to then look at that, and that will allow me to be able to actually scale out, okay, I want to have this section, this plot point needs to be told, then this plot point, this is how it wraps up. And that way you have a clear, defined set of what you want to do. But the biggest thing with when you're working within it is feature creep is a serious problem, and it's something you really have to check when you're working on it, because you're going to be working on stuff and you're going to think, oh, this will be amazing, I need to add this, or this will be great, I should add this. Yes, you should change things of like what works better as you're developing, but if you come across something and you're like, oh, I should do this, but it's like a month worth of work and it'll maybe make a minor change, that's where you have to look at it. It's really when you're looking at what am I working on and what do I need to do, it's what is the time versus the quality that you're going to get out of it. Yeah. Yes.
So as somebody who is kind of at the place where you began, just like making stuff all by myself.
Godspeed.
What would you say, especially through the lens of working with friends, what would you say the transition looks like between being a hobby game developer and working with friends who, volunteer effort in exchange for, making payment in the future, to being a company with employees that you have salaries for?
Yeah. It's so you need to be able to. The change happens when money's involved. That's ultimately when it happens, and it's something that, I really wish I could give you an easy answer for that, because yes, you're 100% right. It is a very different work environment now, and I'm trying to think of when exactly the change was, because it is, when you're working with your friends, it's a very different environment compared to working on like your job, and it's something that you need to show the seriousness in it. For me, I've always put 110% in this. I love this. I live and breathe this. I do everything I can to make this happen. And if you do that and you do the work and people see that you're doing that, people are going to want to follow. This has been fantastic, and I can't stress this enough, because you need to be more than an idea guy. I don't think any of you are just idea guys. I think you all have you all have different things that you're able to contribute to the project. But being able to have a basic understanding of everything that your friends or your people that you're working with are working on will actually make this a lot easier. Because once, if someone's working in Maya and they're like, oh, this is stuck, damn it, I'll go deal with it later. You can be like, no, hold on, maybe it's this, or this. And once you're able to actually have an understanding of it, I don't say you gotta be a master of programming or modeling or whatever, but if you're able to actually jump in and be like, hey, it might be this, or hey, it might be that, you show the seriousness, the seriousness and the actual drive that hey, I want this to be a serious thing. That transition will happen, and if it doesn't, that's how you find the team members that want to make this happen and don't. And it's one of those things where, like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are people who I worked on this with over the years who I don't work with anymore. And it's something that it's going to happen, and you have to look at it as, like, friends are friends, business is business. I can still be friends with you, but if you do something that is a detriment to me and the people who work with you, then I can't work with you. And it's nothing against them as a friend. And again, I don't want to, I'm not trying to be like the like guru of like friendship advice here, but like if they can't handle that, I don't think you're losing a tremendous amount, because so many people who I don't work with anymore remain my friends. And it's something that as long as you can set up that boundary, you won't have to worry about it. Yes?
When you're saying you want to do a game that says you're starting out to get some buddies together to do something, and if you're lucky, it might be a hit or something, and you go on. But when you get to the point where you're paying a salary and then their life is changing, they're no longer doing this as a hobby, they can still go out on Friday night and do whatever they want. They have that a lifestyle commitment at that point. You're providing a salary that other people's lives are depending on. So it's a joint environment that both have to take it seriously. That
Yeah.
It's no longer a friendship. You can have a friendship, but business is business.
Yep.
And if you want to survive, it brings a whole new seriousness to the aspect.
Yeah.
You want to go without action or whatever is nothing more than free. And so that's.
Yeah, 100%, and that's something where it's something that you touch on something that is very important. When I look at it, is that I'm responsible for the livelihoods of people, and for those of you out there who do want to start your own video game studio, that is a very heavy thing that you do have to realize. And I just get chills thinking about it. I'm sorry. It's one of those things. It's very difficult because you do feel that responsibility, and that's where it makes it that, like, these people are your friends. They were your friends when you started, but it is business. They need to be able to contribute and be helping towards the goal for it to happen. And if they aren't doing that, then they aren't working towards the same goal as you. There's so many. I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll go there and then we'll move our way across. No, I have a singular EIN for Dogwood Gaming. It's just that, the Technology Council for Maryland does a lot of grants for innovation and design and technology, and they're fantastic because you can just, you submit your stuff and it's like, who's your company? What's your company's registered name that they're under? And that you can just use your production studio for everything. No, you're fine. No, you don't. So it depends. For a grant, those requirements are a lot less because it's not a direct investment where the person is seeking a return. So you don't have to have nearly as much of a, I'm going to present this. They're buying into the hey, I'm working on this project. And you're not gonna, like, if you release your game and you don't make tens of millions of dollars, you're not gonna be on the hook to the state of Maryland for that grant you got. Yeah, of course. Who was?
That was effectively my question.
Oh, okay, you're fine. Yeah, of course. No, I mean, I'll be around. So, yes.
So, can you give us the spark notes for your experiences and do's and don'ts with startup capital and gaming investors and how you sort of get that into the
Be very, very careful when you do have money to work with. I will say this: this is something that it'll depend on the size of the fund you actually receive. But you need to be able to make sure that before you spend a dime of the money that you get from investments or grants or anything, you need to budget. It's going to go to this, it's going to go to that, it's going to go to this. Because the last thing you want to do is receive an investment from somebody and then get halfway through the amount of time you were working with, and then you're like, oh, I'm out of money. sorry, investor, there's now nothing left. That's the last thing you ever want to have happen. It is a very difficult thing because, you know, most indie developers aren't coming from a ton of money. You know, if we all had the ability to dump $5 million into our game projects, we'd be fine. You know, you'd have a marketing budget. It wouldn't matter. And it's just one of those things that when you're working with that money at the scale that indie developers are, you just have to be so careful. And really, it sounds, again, cliche, but you got to dot your I's and cross your T's. Like when you're dealing with like a business level side of things or your taxes or anything like that, you have to be so careful. But the thing is that as you do it, it will come way easier. I can confidently do my company's taxes. I don't have any worries that like I would screw them up. But the first year I did them, oh God, I was terrified. I thought I was going to be audited and lose everything. And it's just one of those things where it's just everybody's in the same boat, even if they're not a game developer. Anybody who's like just starting out with that kind of capital, as long as you're careful, you're not going to run into problems with it. Yes.
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned a little bit like working with like friends or other people you know. How do you, if you have someone who's passionate at making games and good at 2D art, for example, if you're maybe 2 or 3 people, and I'm a programmer myself, and so I've got friends who work on projects, and they'll ask me questions about his art, and like how I want UI and things, like what it's my idea, whatever. And I don't know how to respond to them. So how do I keep, or do you have any advice for keeping someone engaged in that situation? And I can go with programmers as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for the UI stuff, so Tyler up front actually does a ton of the UI work for me. So this is something that, he has a lot of experience in Adobe and all those kind of products. I don't really, I've done some Photoshop work, but like I don't know anything about After Effects or anything like that. And it's something where you as a programmer are going to know the basics, the dimensions, right? Like if you provide the dimensions and you're like, hey, this is the size it needs to be, I'd like to see some different like ideas. Then your friend is now like, oh, I get to design the UI for this whole thing, and like it's not just a hey, I need it to look like this. It's more of a like, hey, I'd like to see what you come up with. And then not only does he now have that creative freedom, you're gonna get multiple designs that it's gonna have a lot of care and thought put into them that you can then choose from. And I mean, that's really like, that I think is the best way to do it, especially for things that you and I don't fully understand, is if you offer that kind of freedom with the guidance that is, the basics. You have to have the right capsule dimensions for your UI. That has to be there. But as long as you provide that, that's the thing that the artist is really going to care about. Tyler is going to kill me if I give him the wrong capsule resolution, because he's going to do all this work specifically for what I told him, and then it's not the right thing. So I really think that like you can give the dimensions and then be like, I'd like to see what you can come up with. I think you'll get that engagement out of them. Yes. If anybody would like to talk afterwards, I'll be around or outside. But yeah, thank you so much for being here, guys. I really appreciate it.